The night was thick with an eerie silence, the kind that makes your skin crawl and your breath hitch in your throat. I had been driving for hours, the narrow road winding through a dense forest that seemed to stretch on forever. My headlights cut through the darkness, but the trees loomed like shadowy giants, their branches clawing at the sky. I shouldn't have taken this shortcut. I knew at the moment I turned off the main highway, but the GPS insisted it was the fastest route. Now, I was lost, and the fuel gauge was inching closer to empty. The first sign that something was wrong came when the radio crackled and died. One moment, a soft melody was playing, and the next, static filled the car. I fiddled with the dials, but no matter what I did, the static remained. I turned it off, trying to ignore the unease settling in my chest. Then, the engine sputtered. My heart leapt into my throat as the car jerked, the headlights flickering. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. Come on, I muttered, pressing the accelerator. The car lurched forward, but the engine sounded sick, like it was struggling to stay alive. I rounded a bend, and there it was, a house. It stood alone in a small clearing, its windows dark and lifeless. The sight of it should have been a relief, but instead, a cold dread washed over me. The house was old, its paint peeling, the roof sagging as if it were tired of standing. A crooked mailbox leaned precariously at the end of the driveway, the name on it faded and unreadable. I pulled over, my car shuddering to a stop. I had no choice. I needed help, and this was the only sign of civilization I'd seen in miles. The air was unnaturally still as I stepped out of the car, the crunch of gravel beneath my feet unnervingly loud. My breath came out in visible puffs, though the night wasn't particularly cold. I approached the house, each step feeling heavier than the last. The porch creaked under my weight, and I hesitated before knocking on the door. The sound echoed, too loud in the silence. No one answered. I knocked again, louder this time, and the door creaked open on its own, just a crack. My stomach churned. Hello. I called, my voice trembling. Is anyone home? The door swung open wider, revealing a dark hallway. The air that wafted out was stale, carrying the faint scent of something rotten. I should have turned back. I should have run to my car and driven away, engine be damned. But something compelled me to step inside. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the feeling that I wasn't alone, that something was watching me. The floorboards groaned under my weight as I moved deeper into the house. My phone's flashlight barely pierced the darkness, casting long, flickering shadows on the walls. The house was frozen in time, the furniture covered in dusty sheets, the walls adorned with faded photographs of people I didn't recognize. Their eyes seemed to follow me as I passed. I reached the staircase, my light catching something on the steps, a single, muddy footprint, fresh enough that the edges were still damp. My breath quickened. Someone was here. Or something. Hello. I called again, my voice barely above a whisper. The house responded with a creak, the sound coming from upstairs. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like a mistake. The air grew colder the higher I went, and by the time I reached the top, I could see my breath. The hallway stretched before me, doors lining either side. All of them were closed except one at the far end. It stood slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning me forward. My heart pounded in my ears as I approached, my flashlight trembling in my hand. I pushed the door open, and the beam of light fell on a figure standing in the corner, facing the wall. I froze, my blood turning to ice. The figure was tall, its shoulders hunched, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. It didn't move, didn't react to my presence. "Hey," I said, my voice shaking. "Are you okay?" No response. I took a step closer, my flashlight catching the details of its clothes, tattered, stained, and old. Too old. My stomach dropped as I realized the figure wasn't breathing. It wasn't alive. And then it moved. Its head snapped around, the sound of cracking bone filling the room. I screamed, stumbling back as it turned to face me. Its face was a grotesque mask of decay, its eyes hollow, its mouth twisted into a grin too wide for its face. It lunged at me, and I bolted, my flashlight falling from my hand and rolling away. The darkness swallowed me as I ran, the sound of its footsteps close behind. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I reached the stairs and practically threw myself down them, my legs giving out as I hit the bottom. Pain shot through my ankle, but I forced myself to keep moving, crawling toward the front door. The thing was coming. I could hear it, its footsteps slow and deliberate, like it was savoring the chase. I reached the door and pulled myself up, yanking it open and stumbling outside. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys as I tried to unlock it. The engine roared to life, and I slammed the car into gear, peeling out of the driveway. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't need to. I could feel its eyes on me, watching me as I fled into the night. I didn't stop driving until I reached the highway, my hands still shaking on the wheel. The sun was rising, casting a pale light over the horizon. I told myself it was over, that I was safe. But deep down, I knew the truth. That thing, whatever it was, wasn't done with me. I could still feel its presence, a cold weight pressing against my chest. And as I drove, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, that it was only a matter of time before it found me again. The days that followed were a blur. I tried to convince myself it had all been a nightmare, a product of exhaustion and stress. But the muddy footprints on my car's floor mat told a different story. I scrubbed them away, but the stain remained, a constant reminder of that night. I avoided the news, afraid of what I might see, but the whispers found me anyway. Stories of disappearances in the area, of people vanishing without a trace. And then there were the dreams. Every night, I found myself back in that house, standing at the foot of the stairs, the figure waiting for me at the top. It never moved, never spoke, but its presence was suffocating. I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart pounding, the sound of its footsteps echoing in my ears. I started sleeping with the lights on, but it didn't help. The darkness always found a way in. One night, I woke up to the sound of scratching at my window. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. Something was out there, dragging its nails across the glass. I told myself it was just a tree branch, but the rational part of my mind was slipping away. I grabbed my phone, my hands shaking as I turned on the flashlight. The beam of light illuminated the window, and my heart stopped. There, pressed against the glass, was a face. Its eyes were hollow, its mouth twisted into that same grotesque grin. It was watching me, its head tilted at that unnatural angle. I screamed, scrambling out of bed and backing away from the window. The thing didn't move, didn't react. It just stared, its eyes boring into mine. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a lamp, and hurled it at the window. The glass shattered, and the face disappeared. But when I looked again, there was nothing there. No broken glass, no face. Just the empty night staring back at me. I didn't sleep after that. I couldn't. Every sound, every shadow, sent me into a panic. I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, figures standing in the dark, watching me. But when I turned to look, there was nothing there. I tried to tell myself it was just my imagination, but the fear was real. It was consuming me, eating away at my sanity. And then the letters started coming. The first one arrived a week after the incident at the house. It was in my mailbox, no postmark, no return address. Just my name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. I opened it, my hands trembling, and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The message was short, but it sent a chill down my spine. You shouldn't have come to the house. I threw the letter away, trying to convince myself it was a prank. But more letters followed, each one more disturbing than the last. They were always waiting for me when I got home, no matter how early or late I arrived. The messages grew longer, more personal, as if the sender knew everything about me. My fears, my secrets, my nightmares. And then came the final letter. I'm coming for you. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I packed a bag and left, driving as far as I could. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. The thing from the house was real, and it was hunting me. I could feel it, a cold presence lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. I've been on the road for weeks now, never staying in one place for too long. I don't know how much longer I can keep running, but I know I can't stop. The thing is still out there, and it won't rest until it finds me. I see it sometimes, in the rearview mirror, standing on the side of the road, watching me drive away. Its grin is wider now, its eyes filled with a hunger that terrifies me. I don't know how this ends, but I know it won't be good. The thing from the house is coming, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. All I can do is keep running, keep hiding, and hope that it never catches up to me. But deep down, I know the truth. It's only a matter of time before it finds me. And when it does, I'll be ready. Or at least, that's what I tell myself. But the truth is, I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. The thing from the house is coming, and when it finds me, there will be no escape. All I can do is wait, and hope that the end comes quickly. Because the alternative, the thought of being trapped with that thing, of being its plaything for eternity, is too much to bear. So I keep running, keep hiding, and pray that it never finds me. But the truth is, I know it will. And when it does, I'll be ready. Or at least, that's what I tell myself. But deep down, I know the truth. There's no escaping the thing from the house. It's coming for me, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. All I can do is wait, and hope that the end comes quickly. Because the alternative is too much to bear. The nights grew longer, darker, and colder as I continued to flee. The roads became unfamiliar, the towns I passed through blurring into one another. I avoided people, avoided conversations, avoided anything that might slow me down. Every time I stopped for gas or food, I felt its presence, like a shadow just out of reach. I'd catch glimpses of it in the corner of my eye, a figure standing at the edge of the woods, a face peering through the window of a diner, a silhouette in the rearview mirror. But when I turned to look, it was gone. Always gone. I started to notice patterns, signs that it was toying with me. The letters stopped appearing in my mailbox, but now they showed up in the strangest places, under my motel room door, tucked into the glove compartment of my car, even slipped into the pocket of my jacket. The messages were always the same, always taunting me, you can't run forever. I'm getting closer. I can see you. I burned the letters, tore them to shreds, but it didn't matter. The words were seared into my mind, replaying over and over like a broken record. One night, I pulled into a rundown motel on the edge of a small town. The neon sign flickered weakly, casting an eerie glow over the parking lot. I paid in cash, avoiding the clerk's curious gaze, and locked myself in the room. The air was stale, the carpet stained, but I didn't care. I just needed to rest, even if it was only for a few hours. I pushed a chair under the doorknob and sat on the edge of the bed, clutching a knife I'd bought at a gas station. It was a pathetic weapon, but it was all I had. I must have dozed off because I woke up to the sound of scratching. It was faint at first, like nails dragging across wood, but it grew louder, more insistent. My heart raced as I realized it was coming from the door. I gripped the knife tighter, my eyes fixed on the chair I'd wedged under the knob. It rattled slightly, as if something was pushing against it. I held my breath, my body frozen in fear. The scratching stopped, and for a moment, there was silence. Then, a voice. "Let me in." It was low and guttural, barely human. My blood ran cold. I knew that voice. It was the same one I'd heard in my dreams, the same one that whispered to me in the dark. I pressed my hands over my ears, trying to block it out, but it was no use. The voice was inside my head, echoing in my skull. "You can't hide from me. I'll always find you." I don't know how long I sat there, trembling, waiting for the thing to break through the door. But it never did. When the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, the voice faded, and the scratching stopped. I didn't wait to see if it would come back. I grabbed my bag and ran to the car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. The motel was shrinking in the distance, but something caught my eye. A figure stood in the parking lot, watching me leave. It was too far away to make out any details, but I knew who it was. The thing from the house. It was still following me, still hunting me. And it was getting closer. I didn't stop driving until the sun was high in the sky, and even then, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The roads were empty, the landscape barren, but I couldn't shake the sense of dread that clung to me like a second skin. I knew I couldn't keep running forever. The thing was relentless, and it wouldn't stop until it had me. But what choice did I have? I couldn't fight it. I couldn't hide from it. All I could do was keep moving, keep hoping that somehow, I'd find a way to escape. But deep down, I knew the truth. There was no escape. The thing from the house was coming for me, and when it found me, there would be no mercy. All I could do was wait, and hope that the end came quickly. Because the alternative, the thought of being trapped with that thing, of being its plaything for eternity, was too much to bear. The days blurred together, each one more exhausting than the last. I stopped looking at the clock, stopped keeping track of time. It didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was staying ahead of it, staying alive. But the thing was relentless. It was always there, always watching, always waiting. I could feel it in the air, a cold, oppressive presence that followed me wherever I went. One night, I pulled into a rest stop, my eyes heavy with exhaustion. I hadn't slept in days, and my body was starting to give out. I parked in a well-lit area, locked the doors, and closed my eyes, just for a moment. But as soon as I did, the dreams came. I was back in the house, standing at the foot of the stairs. The figure was there, waiting for me at the top. It didn't move, didn't speak, but its presence was suffocating. I tried to wake up, but I couldn't. I was trapped, forced to relive the nightmare over and over. When I finally woke up, the car was cold, and the windows were fogged. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the lingering fear, but something felt off. The rest stop was silent, the parking lot empty. Even the streetlights seemed dimmer, casting long, twisted shadows across the asphalt. I started the car, my hands trembling on the wheel, and pulled out of the parking lot. As I drove, I noticed something in the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights, far behind me, but gaining fast. My heart raced as I pressed the accelerator, trying to put distance between us. But the headlights kept coming, closer and closer, until they were right on my tail. I swerved onto a side road, hoping to lose them, but the headlights followed. I could feel the panic rising in my chest, my breath coming in short, ragged gasps. I didn't know what to do. I was trapped, with nowhere to run. And then, the headlights disappeared. I slowed down, my heart pounding, and glanced in the rearview mirror. The road behind me was empty. There were no headlights, no car, no sign of anyone following me. But the sense of dread didn't go away. If anything, it grew stronger. I knew the thing was still out there, still hunting me. And it was only a matter of time before it found me. I don't know how much longer I can keep running. The thing is relentless, and it won't stop until it has me. All I can do is wait, and hope that the end comes quickly. Because the alternative, the thought of being trapped with that thing, of being its plaything for eternity, is too much to bear. So I keep running, keep hiding, and pray that it never finds me. But deep down, I know the truth. There's no escaping the thing from the house. It's coming for me, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. All I can do is wait, and hope that the end comes quickly. Because the alternative is too much to bear. The car's engine sputtered again, a harsh reminder of how little time I had left. I glanced at the fuel gauge, the needle hovered just above empty. I couldn't keep driving like this, but stopping wasn't an option. Not with it out there. The road stretched endlessly before me, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the dense, unyielding forest. The trees seemed to close in on either side, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my palms slick with sweat. Every shadow, every flicker of movement in the periphery of my vision made my heart race. Was it here? Was it watching me right now? I tried to focus on the road, but my mind kept drifting back to the house. That cursed, rotting house. I could still smell the damp wood, the mildew, the faint metallic tang of something I couldn't, or didn't want to, identify. The memory of that figure, its grotesque grin, its hollow eyes, haunted me. It wasn't just a nightmare. It was real. And it was coming for me. I could feel it in the air, a heavy, oppressive weight that pressed down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. The letters, the scratching, the voice, they were all warnings. And I had ignored them. Now, I was paying the price. The rain started suddenly, a torrential downpour that blurred the windshield and made the road slick. I turned on the wipers, but they did little to help. The headlights barely cut through the storm, illuminating only a few feet ahead. I slowed down, my knuckles white as I struggled to keep the car on the road. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees swaying violently in the wind. I felt like I was driving through a tunnel, the darkness pressing in from all sides. And then, I saw it. A figure stood in the middle of the road, its silhouette illuminated by the headlights. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as the car skidded to a stop. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the figure, my mind racing. It was it. The thing from the house. Its head tilted at that unnatural angle, its grin wide and grotesque. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. It just stood there, staring at me, its hollow eyes boring into mine. And then, it was gone. I blinked, my hands trembling on the wheel. The road was empty. There was no figure, no sign that anything had been there. But I knew what I had seen. It was real. It was here. And it was playing with me. I pressed the accelerator, the car lurching forward as I sped down the road. The rain pounded against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. If I stopped, it would find me. And when it did, there would be no escape. The storm raged on, the wind howling like a wounded animal. I drove for hours, the road twisting and turning through the endless forest. My eyes burned with exhaustion, but I didn't dare stop. Not now. Not when it was so close. I could feel it, a cold presence lurking just out of sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. The car's engine sputtered again, the fuel gauge now firmly in the red. I didn't know how much longer I could keep going, but I had no choice. I had to keep moving. I had to stay ahead of it. And then, the engine died. The car coasted to a stop, the headlights flickering before going out completely. I sat there in the darkness, the rain pounding against the roof, my heart racing. I was out of gas. Out of options. I glanced around, my eyes straining to see through the storm. The forest loomed on either side, the trees swaying in the wind. I didn't know where I was, but I knew I couldn't stay here. I grabbed my bag and stepped out of the car, the rain soaking me instantly. The cold bit into my skin, but I barely noticed. All I could think about was getting away. I started walking, my feet slipping on the wet pavement. The road stretched endlessly before me, disappearing into the darkness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. If I stopped, it would find me. And when it did, there would be no escape. The rain poured down, the wind howling in my ears. I could feel it, a cold presence following me, watching me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept walking, my heart pounding in my chest. And then, I saw it. A light in the distance, faint but unmistakable. A house. My stomach churned as I realized where I was. The road, the forest, the storm, it had all led me back here. Back to the house. The house where it all began. I wanted to turn around, to run, but my feet kept moving, carrying me closer to the light. The rain soaked through my clothes, the cold seeping into my bones. I could feel it, a cold presence behind me, pushing me forward. I didn't have a choice. I had to go inside. The porch creaked under my weight as I stepped onto it, the door swinging open on its own. The air inside was stale, the scent of rot and decay filling my nostrils. I stepped inside, my heart pounding in my chest. The house was just as I remembered it, the dusty furniture, the faded photographs, the crooked staircase. And at the top of the stairs, the figure stood, its head tilted at that unnatural angle, its grin wide and grotesque. It was waiting for me. I wanted to run, to scream, but I couldn't move. My feet carried me forward, up the stairs, toward the figure. Its hollow eyes watched me, its grin widening as I approached. I tried to stop, to turn around, but it was no use. I was trapped, forced to relive the nightmare over and over. The figure reached out, its cold, bony fingers wrapping around my wrist. I could feel its breath on my face, cold and rancid, as it leaned in close. "You shouldn't have come back," it whispered, its voice low and guttural. And then, the darkness swallowed me whole.